The single mother woke up before the sun, the small apartment already carrying the sounds of a new day. Her child was still sleeping, curled under a thin blanket, the faint light casting soft shadows across the room. She gently shook the child awake, her voice soft but firm, reminding them that today, like every other, would be a long day. She prepared breakfast, simple and quick, and packed a small lunch into a worn bag, careful to include what her child liked. Her own breakfast was often something she grabbed in a hurry, a piece of bread or a cup of coffee, because there was never enough time to sit and eat. She kissed her child on the forehead, ruffled their hair, and reminded them to be good at school. Then she left the apartment and locked the door behind her, the key turning with a familiar click. The streets were quiet, only the occasional car passing by or a neighbor heading to work. She walked with purpose, her mind already on the day ahead, the jobs she had to manage, the bills she had to pay, and the little things that needed attention. Despite the weight of responsibilities, she kept her head up, her steps steady, her eyes alert. Her route home from work often included a shortcut through the woods. It was a path she had used for years, one she knew well, though it carried its risks. There were times when she felt uneasy, hearing strange sounds or noticing shadows moving just beyond her vision. She always told herself it was nothing, just the woods being the woods, but a small part of her remained alert, ready for anything. Today was no different. The morning light filtered through the trees, creating patterns on the ground, and she moved carefully, listening for the crunch of leaves beneath her feet. The forest seemed peaceful at first, birds chirping in the distance, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. But as she walked deeper into the trees, a faint feeling of unease crept over her. She shook it off, thinking about the work waiting for her, the tasks she could not avoid. Yet there was something subtle, almost imperceptible, that made her quicken her pace. The sounds of the forest seemed to shift, and she noticed something odd, a piece of paper fluttering in the wind, caught between the branches of a small bush. She reached for it, curious, and saw that it was blank, or maybe it was just the light playing tricks on her. She shrugged and moved on, telling herself she was imagining things. As she walked, she thought about the evening ahead. She had a long shift, and then she would need to pick up groceries before heading home. The thought of dinner, of making sure her child had something warm to eat, kept her going. Life had been hard since she became a mother alone, but she had learned to adapt, to keep moving even when it felt like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. She often wondered how people managed without any support at all. She was lucky in some ways, at least she had her child, and she had herself, and that was enough to keep fighting. The sound of a twig snapping behind her made her stop. She turned quickly, scanning the trees, but saw nothing. The forest was quiet again, almost too quiet. Her heart beat faster, and she considered turning back, going the longer route along the main road. But she reminded herself that this shortcut saved her time, and she needed every minute she could get. She walked on, trying to steady her breathing, telling herself that the noises were probably just animals, small creatures moving in the underbrush. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered. She continued deeper into the woods, her eyes scanning for any movement, her hands brushing against the rough bark of trees as she passed. The sun climbed higher, and the forest was filled with a golden glow, but it did little to ease the tension she felt. She tried to focus on mundane things, how much she needed to buy at the store, what chores awaited her at home, but the feeling of unease remained. She quickened her pace, each step crunching leaves beneath her shoes. Suddenly, she noticed something strange ahead. A patch of disturbed earth caught her eye, different from the natural patterns of the forest floor. She approached cautiously, kneeling down to examine it. The soil seemed recently moved, soft and loose. Her heart raced. She reached out to touch it and felt something solid beneath the dirt. Panic surged through her. She stepped back, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Could it be an animal? A fallen tree? The thought of danger made her stomach churn. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, and then she carefully moved closer. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed away leaves and debris, revealing something more than just dirt. She realized with a shock that it was a hand, pale and weak, sticking out from the earth. Fear gripped her, but so did a surge of determination. She had to help. There was no time to think, only to act. She knelt beside the grave, her mind racing for a solution. She looked around for something to use, anything to help lift the person out. The person beneath the dirt was a man, struggling to breathe, eyes wide with terror. He looked at her with a mix of hope and fear, silently begging for help. She felt a rush of adrenaline, the fear of the situation mixing with the instinct to save a life. She grabbed her small bag, pulling out the heaviest item she could find to help lever him out. Her movements were careful but urgent, each second feeling like an eternity. The man groaned, his voice weak, telling her to hurry. That time was critical. She pushed herself harder, muscles straining, heart pounding, refusing to let panic take over. After what felt like endless moments, she managed to pull him out of the shallow grave. He collapsed onto the ground, coughing and gasping for air. She helped him sit up, supporting him as best she could. His face was pale, sweat on his brow, and his eyes filled with fear and confusion. He tried to speak but could only manage a hoarse whisper. She listened carefully, realizing that the danger was not over yet, that someone had put him there and could return at any moment. She glanced around the forest, her mind racing for an escape plan. She knew the path out, but it would take time, and he was weak. She helped him to his feet, supporting him as they moved slowly but steadily through the trees. Each step was careful, avoiding loose branches and uneven ground. She could hear the distant sounds of the forest, birds calling and leaves rustling, but every shadow made her heart leap. The man leaned on her, his gratitude silent but palpable, his trust growing with each step they took together. As they neared the edge of the woods, the sun was higher, casting light on the path that led to safety. She urged him forward, whispering reassurances even as her own fear remained. He struggled but kept moving, relying on her strength and determination. Finally, they reached a clearing that opened to a road. Relief washed over her, but she knew they were not completely safe. She called out, hoping for a passerby, a car, anyone who could help. Soon a vehicle appeared and she guided him toward it, waving for assistance. The man's eyes reflected relief, a silent thank you for saving him, for risking herself when others might have hesitated. After the initial shock passed, she stood back, watching him being helped into the car. A sense of satisfaction and exhaustion mingling within her. She knew that her life had changed in ways she could not yet understand, that this encounter would stay with her forever. She returned home later, tired but resolute, knowing that bravery was not about strength alone, but about the willingness to act when it mattered most. That night she lay awake, thinking of the man, the danger and the quiet courage that had carried them through. She did not know what the future held, but she knew that she had done something extraordinary, and that knowledge gave her a quiet strength as she drifted into a restless but hopeful sleep. After the single mother had helped the man to safety, her mind raced with questions. Who had done this? Why would someone bury a man alive in the woods? And why had she, of all people, found him? The woods seemed quiet now, almost peaceful, but the memory of the panic in his eyes haunted her. She walked slowly back to her apartment, the evening shadows stretching long over the streets, the weight of the day pressing down on her shoulders. Her child had gone to bed, unaware of the extraordinary events that had taken place. She sat in the quiet of her small living room, trying to make sense of it all, sipping a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The next morning, the man's situation was on her mind again. She wondered if he had received help, if he was safe. Her life continued, the routine pulling her in, preparing breakfast, taking her child to school, going to work. But the encounter in the woods lingered, a shadow over the mundane tasks. She could not forget the fear in his eyes, the desperation, and the silent gratitude that had followed. Even as she moved through her day, she felt a strange connection to a man she barely knew. Meanwhile, the man struggled to recover from the ordeal. He was wealthy, and he had assistance and medical care, but the experience had left him shaken. He could not sleep without seeing the dark soil of the grave, without remembering the helplessness, the fear of death pressing down on him. He tried to understand how he had survived, how someone had saved him in the nick of time. The woman who had freed him was a stranger, yet her bravery had made all the difference. He wanted to see her again, to express his gratitude, but he hesitated. He did not want to intrude on her life, to appear as if he expected anything in return. Several days later, the woman returned to the woods. She could not help herself. The memory of the scene drew her back. She walked carefully along the path, her senses alert, each step echoing softly against the trees. She noticed small details she had missed before, broken branches, footprints, and a faint impression in the mud where something heavy had been dragged. Her heart pounded not from fear but from curiosity, from a desire to understand the danger she had narrowly avoided. She realized that the woods held secrets she was only beginning to uncover. As she approached the clearing, she saw someone waiting, The man standing tall despite the ordeal looked at her with a mixture of relief and awkwardness. He thanked her, his voice firm but gentle, for saving his life. He explained that he had been targeted by someone he had trusted, that his success and wealth had made him a target for those who wanted to harm him. His story was detailed, filled with complications, threats, and betrayals she could barely imagine. Yet he spoke calmly, as if the act of sharing it with her gave him strength. She listened, her heart heavy with concern but also filled with a strange empathy. She had faced struggles of her own, though different in nature, and she understood fear and resilience. She asked questions, careful not to overstep, and he answered, grateful for her interest and for the calm presence she provided. He did not speak much about money or status, only about survival, about the lessons he had learned and the people he had lost along the way. In that moment, he was human, vulnerable, and she was simply a witness to the raw reality of his experience. They spoke for hours, walking along the forest paths, careful to remain alert but also finding comfort in the quiet. He told her how he had been buried alive, how he had felt his life slipping away, and how strange it had been to have a stranger save him. Her courage, her instinct to act without hesitation, had been his lifeline. She did not see herself as heroic, but he insisted that her actions had been extraordinary. The conversation drew them closer, not in romance but in a deep mutual respect and understanding. They were two people from different worlds, yet connected by an intense, life-altering moment. As the days passed, they kept in touch. He sent messages of gratitude, checking on her well-being, and she responded with simple updates about her life, her work, and her child. Their connection remained grounded, human, not defined by wealth or status, but by the shared experience of survival and courage. She sometimes wondered what he had whispered the night he was freed, the words that had lingered in her mind but made no sense at the time. He had not explained, only looked at her with eyes full of meaning, and that unspoken message remained a mystery. One afternoon, as she walked through a local market, she noticed the man approaching. He had come to meet her in person, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to ensure she was safe and to express his thanks properly. They walked together, talking quietly, sharing small stories about daily life and noticing the small joys and frustrations that came with ordinary existence. It was a strange, comforting contrast to the terror and urgency of their first encounter. For a moment, the world outside the woods felt normal, and yet beneath the calm, the memory of danger and survival remained. He shared small fragments of his life with her, not to impress but to build a bridge of understanding. He told her about his work, the responsibilities that weighed on him and the challenges that came with success. She listened, offering empathy and insight, sharing her own struggles without revealing too much, keeping the conversation grounded. Their dialogue became a mix of ordinary life and extraordinary experience, a testament to human resilience and connection. One evening, they returned to the woods, retracing the path where she had first found him. He walked carefully, occasionally glancing at the ground, remembering the place where death had seemed certain. She stayed close, guiding him when the terrain grew uneven, her knowledge of the forest proving invaluable. They paused at the clearing where he had been buried and stood in silence. Words were unnecessary. The moment was heavy with meaning, a silent acknowledgement of danger, survival, and gratitude. He finally spoke, his voice low and steady, whispering words that made her pause. She did not understand fully, the meaning only partially clear, but she felt the weight of it, the hidden significance that touched both of them deeply. The words were a secret shared between survivor and savior, a connection that transcended explanation. They left the clearing together, carrying with them the memory of what had occurred and the unspoken bond forged in the heart of danger. As days turned into weeks, life resumed its rhythm. She continued her work, caring for her child, managing the demands of daily life. He returned to his own world, his responsibilities and obligations. But the encounter in the woods remained with him, a reminder of human courage and the unexpected kindness of strangers. They met occasionally in quiet, unassuming ways, their interactions marked by respect, trust, and the silent understanding that their lives had been forever changed. The experience taught her something profound. Courage was not about absence of fear, but about acting despite it. She realized that even ordinary people, faced with extraordinary circumstances, could make a difference. The man, in turn, learned humility, gratitude, and the importance of human connection beyond wealth or status. Their shared experience had created a bond that was rare and unbreakable, rooted in survival, empathy, and the quiet strength of the human spirit. And though the forest remained, with its shadows and whispers, she no longer walked with fear alone. She walked with the knowledge that bravery could be found in unexpected places, in the quiet decisions that defined a life. The man, too, carried the lesson with him, understanding that trust, compassion, and courage could be the difference between life and death. In the heart of the woods, in the midst of fear and danger, two lives had intersected, and the memory of that connection would shape them forever. The days after the rescue were filled with a strange mixture of relief and unease. The single mother tried to continue her normal life, but every sound in the apartment or every shadow on the street seemed sharper, as if her senses had been permanently heightened. She could not forget the image of the man buried in the earth, struggling for air, and the helplessness in his eyes. Even at work, she found herself distracted, thinking of the woods, of the secret danger that still lingered somewhere near. Yet she knew she could not let fear rule her life. She had responsibilities, and she had survived far worse in her own struggles. Courage, she reminded herself, was acting even when fear was present. The man, too, was haunted by the memory. He had returned to his life of meetings, calls, and endless responsibilities, but sleep eluded him. Nightmares plagued him, visions of the grave, of being buried alive again, of the unknown person who had left him in that condition. He kept a journal now, documenting every detail, trying to make sense of what had happened and thinking constantly of the woman who had saved him. Her bravery seemed almost impossible to comprehend. A stranger, a woman with so many burdens of her own, had risked everything to save a life. The thought humbled him. One afternoon he contacted her directly, asking if she could meet him to talk. She hesitated, unsure of what to expect, but curiosity and concern won out. They arranged a quiet meeting in a public park, somewhere safe, surrounded by people yet still allowing them to speak freely. She arrived first, her eyes scanning the area as she waited. When he appeared, the sight of him brought back memories both terrifying and comforting. He walked slowly toward her, a mixture of caution and gratitude evident in his posture. They began to walk along the park paths, talking in low voices. He thanked her again, explaining the ongoing danger he faced from the person who had tried to kill him. The situation was complex. There were rivals, business conflicts, and old grudges that had escalated to this point. He could not share every detail, but enough to convey the seriousness. She listened, absorbing the information, feeling both fear and determination. They were two people from different worlds, but the shared experience had created a bond stronger than circumstance or status. As they spoke, they realized that the threat had not disappeared. The person who had buried him alive might still be nearby, watching, waiting. The man had taken precautions, hired security, and even changed routines, but nothing could fully guarantee safety. They agreed that they needed to be careful, that even small actions could have consequences. The woods, once a simple shortcut, had become a symbol of danger and survival, a place where life and death had intersected in a terrifying way. She remembered the whisper he had shared the night she rescued him. It had puzzled her then, and even now she could not understand its meaning. He explained that it was a message, a clue left for someone he trusted, something that could change the way events unfolded. It was both a warning and a plea, meant to guide actions and protect against further harm. The words were heavy with significance, and though she did not fully grasp them, she felt their weight and importance. It was a secret she carried now, tied to both of their fates. The days turned into weeks as they coordinated quietly. She learned to navigate the subtle signs of danger. Unfamiliar cars parked nearby, strange phone calls, messages that hinted at threats. Her intuition, honed from years of managing life alone, proved invaluable. She guided him through the city streets, through areas he thought he knew but now seemed unfamiliar under the lens of potential threat. Each step required awareness, each conversation carried caution. Yet through it all they found moments of calm, small pauses where laughter, shared memories, and human connection reminded them that life could be beautiful even amidst peril. One evening, as they walked through a dimly lit street, they encountered a minor incident. A car slowing suspiciously, someone observing them from a distance. She acted quickly, directing him to a safer path, her mind calculating options faster than she could speak. He followed, trusting her instinct, realizing again how extraordinary her courage was. It was not fearlessness but decisive action in the face of fear that saved them. That night, they found refuge in a small, quiet cafe, speaking softly, sharing stories about their lives, their families, and the people they had lost. For a moment, the danger was background noise and they could simply be human, sharing connection and understanding. Their bond deepened with each encounter. He began to see her not only as his savior, but as a person of remarkable strength, resilience, and empathy. She in turn saw him beyond his wealth and status, recognizing his vulnerability, his desire to understand and grow, and his acknowledgement of human connection as more valuable than any material success. Together they navigated a world suddenly filled with caution and awareness, learning from one another, growing in trust and understanding. As the weeks passed, they discovered that the danger was closer than they had realized. Information surfaced suggesting that the person who had buried him alive was still active, still watching. They made a plan, quietly sharing responsibilities, communicating in code, and relying on each other's instincts. She helped him anticipate risks, avoid traps, and make choices that kept him safe. In return, he shared insights from his world, resources, knowledge, and connections that she had never had access to before. The partnership was practical, grounded, and necessary, but it also carried an emotional depth that neither had expected. One night, sitting in her small apartment, they reviewed a map of the city and surrounding areas, identifying safe routes, possible hiding places, and points of contact for emergencies. It was meticulous work, a combination of caution, strategy, and shared determination. They spoke quietly, the air heavy with concentration, yet interspersed with moments of humor, human frustration, and shared reflection. In these moments, they were equal partners, united by circumstance and the need to survive. The whispered words from the night of the rescue lingered in their minds, a puzzle that held significance beyond immediate understanding. Gradually, trust solidified into a quiet understanding. He no longer saw her as merely a stranger who had saved him. She had become a guide, a confidant, and a friend. She no longer saw him as an untouchable figure of wealth and status. He was a human being, vulnerable and in need, yet willing to learn and adapt. Together, they formed a delicate balance, navigating danger while fostering a bond rooted in shared experience and respect. Each day brought new challenges, small victories, and lessons in courage, patience, and empathy. As winter approached, the woods took on a different character. The trees, stripped of their leaves, cast stark shadows, and the paths became slippery and uncertain. They returned to the forest together, checking the clearing where he had been buried, ensuring no signs of intrusion or danger remained. The man looked at the place with a mixture of reverence and caution, while she guided him safely, her awareness of the terrain proving essential. They spoke little, letting the silence carry meaning, each step a reaffirmation of survival and the bond forged in that fateful moment. It was during one of these walks that he finally shared more about the whisper, explaining its context and significance. The words had been meant to alert someone who could act decisively to prevent further harm. Though still partially mysterious, the explanation brought clarity and purpose, giving them both a framework to understand the threat and their roles in navigating it. The gravity of the message was clear, and the trust between them deepened further. Even amidst the danger, there were moments of light. They shared small joys, such as a rare sunny afternoon in the park, a meal together, or quiet conversations about hopes and fears. These moments reminded them that life was not solely defined by peril. It was also about connection, courage, and the simple beauty of shared humanity. Each day they learned more about each other and themselves, discovering strengths and resilience that had been hidden until tested by extraordinary circumstances. By the end of the season, they had navigated threats, built trust, and strengthened their bond. The forest, once a place of terror, became a symbol of survival and human courage. The whispered words, now partially understood, had guided them, reminding them that vigilance, empathy, and action were essential. They knew the danger might return, but they were prepared, aware, and united in purpose. Together they had transformed fear into strength, vulnerability into connection, and an ordinary life into a story of courage and human resilience. Life gradually returned to a rhythm for the single mother, though the shadow of that terrifying day in the woods lingered in her mind. Each morning she woke early, tending to her child, preparing for the long hours at work and managing her responsibilities. Yet beneath the routine, A sense of alertness remained, a quiet awareness that the world was unpredictable and that courage was necessary every day. The encounter with the man had changed her, not in a grand visible way but in small, significant ways that affected how she saw herself and the world around her. She found herself thinking about him often, about his words, his whispered message, and the gratitude he had shown. Though their lives were different in almost every aspect, there was a connection between them that could not be explained by circumstance or status. She wondered how he was coping, whether he had found peace or was still haunted by the memory of being buried alive. The fear he had experienced was unimaginable, yet he faced it with resilience, a strength she admired deeply. The man in turn kept her in his thoughts. He was recovering physically, but the emotional scars ran deep. He had trusted people in his life, and that trust had been broken in the most extreme way possible. Yet she had acted selflessly without hesitation and saved his life. He wanted to understand her world, to see the life she led, and to ensure she remained safe. He did not want to intrude or impose, only to offer support and to maintain the bond forged in the woods, a bond born from crisis and shared humanity. Weeks later, they met in a quiet cafe, a neutral space where they could talk openly. She arrived first, scanning the room for any signs of concern, though the location was public and familiar. When he entered, she felt a strange mixture of relief and tension. Seeing him alive and well was reassuring, but the knowledge of the ongoing danger that had threatened him lingered. They exchanged greetings, careful to keep the conversation casual yet meaningful. The discussion quickly shifted from small talk to the events in the woods, the threats he still faced, and the whispered message that had puzzled her from the start. He explained more about the dangers that had led to his burial, about rivals and individuals who had sought to harm him, and about the precautions he had taken since the event. She listened intently, asking questions when necessary, offering insight based on her own experiences with vigilance and awareness. Their dialogue was a careful balance of caution, empathy, and human connection. She was learning to navigate a world far removed from her own, while he was learning to trust and rely on someone outside of his usual circle. Over the following days, they began to coordinate more intentionally. She helped him plan routes, identify potential risks, and develop strategies to avoid danger. He in turn shared resources and knowledge, providing tools that could enhance her ability to stay safe and protect her child. They were careful, methodical, and aware, yet the work brought them closer, creating a bond rooted not in convenience or social standing but in mutual respect, trust, and the shared experience of surviving a life-threatening situation. One afternoon, while reviewing security footage and discussing strategies, they noticed a pattern, a series of unusual activities that suggested someone was still observing them. The realization was unsettling, a reminder that the danger had not fully disappeared. They decided to take proactive steps using caution and intelligence to prevent any further incidents. She guided him through scenarios, drawing on intuition and past experiences, while he implemented measures that relied on his resources and connections. Together, they created a network of awareness and preparedness, a combination of skill, instinct, and vigilance. Their conversations often turned personal, exploring their hopes, fears, and reflections on life. He spoke about the loneliness of wealth and the challenges of constant scrutiny, while she shared the struggles and resilience of raising a child alone. Each story deepened their understanding of one another, revealing shared values and humanity beneath the surface of their different worlds. Moments of laughter, reflection, and quiet companionship punctuated the intensity of their planning, offering reprieve from the weight of the danger they navigated. One evening, they returned to the woods, retracing the path to the clearing where he had been buried. The air was crisp, shadows long and stretching, and the forest carried the quiet weight of memory. He stood at the clearing, looking at the soil, and reflected on the fragility of life and the extraordinary circumstances that had led to his survival. She stayed beside him, guiding him safely along the uneven terrain, offering reassurance and quiet understanding. Words were sparse. Their presence and shared experience spoke volumes. It was during this visit that he shared more about the whispered message, revealing its full significance. It was a warning, a plan, and a plea, meant to alert someone capable of preventing further harm. She listened, understanding the gravity, and felt the weight of responsibility that came with the knowledge. The moment was heavy with meaning but also solidified their trust. They knew that the danger had not ended, but together they could face it with vigilance, intelligence, and human connection. As the days passed, their bond deepened further. They met in public spaces, discussed strategies, and shared moments of ordinary life. A meal together, a walk in the park, or a quiet conversation about hopes for the future. These moments were grounding, reminders that life was not solely defined by fear or danger. They laughed together, shared small joys, and supported each other in ways that went beyond mere survival. The connection between them became a lifeline, a source of strength and reassurance amidst uncertainty. She also began to see changes within herself. The experience had strengthened her confidence, sharpened her awareness, and heightened her appreciation for life and human connection. She faced challenges at work and at home with renewed determination, knowing that courage was not about fearlessness, but about taking action despite fear. Her child noticed subtle changes in her demeanor, a quiet strength, a calm assurance that inspired trust and comfort. She carried the lessons from the woods into her daily life, navigating ordinary challenges with extraordinary resilience. The man, too, reflected on the changes within himself. He recognized the value of trust, empathy, and courage beyond wealth or status. The experience had humbled him, teaching him the importance of human connection, gratitude, and the quiet strength found in others. He appreciated her insight, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to protecting those she cared for. Their shared journey had created a bond that transcended circumstance, a relationship defined by mutual respect, understanding, and shared survival. One evening, as they sat in her small apartment, they reviewed the events of the past months. They reflected on the danger, the rescue, and the lessons learned. The whispered message, once a mystery, had revealed itself as a guide for vigilance and survival, a reminder of the ongoing need for caution and awareness. They understood that while the immediate threat might have diminished, the memory and impact of the events would remain, shaping their decisions and perspectives in the future. Despite the lingering tension, there were moments of peace. They shared quiet dinners, watched the child play, and engaged in ordinary activities that provided grounding amidst the extraordinary circumstances. The shared experience created a bond that was both practical and deeply human, built on trust, courage, and empathy. They understood that life could be unpredictable, that danger could appear unexpectedly, and that the strength to face it often came from the support and courage of others. In the weeks that followed, they continued to navigate life with heightened awareness and careful planning. The man remained grateful, not only for her actions in the woods but for her presence, guidance, and insight. She remained vigilant, balancing her responsibilities with the lessons learned and the bond formed. Together, they demonstrated that extraordinary circumstances could create profound human connections, that courage and empathy could bridge worlds, and that survival often depended on trust, collaboration, and the quiet strength found in shared experience. By the end of this period, they had established routines that allowed for safety, vigilance, and connection. The forest, once a place of terror, became a symbol of survival, human resilience, and the bonds forged in extreme circumstances. The whispered words, now understood, had guided them, reminding them of the importance of awareness, preparation, and trust. Together, they had transformed fear into strength, danger into wisdom, and vulnerability into connection. The experience had reshaped their lives, leaving an indelible mark of courage, empathy, and shared humanity. The single mother awoke with a sense of quiet determination. The past weeks had been challenging, filled with danger, vigilance, and the lingering presence of fear, yet she had faced each moment with courage and resilience. Her child stirred beside her and she smiled, grateful for the small, ordinary joys that made life worth living. She prepared for the day as she always did, but a subtle shift had occurred within her. She moved with confidence, aware that she had faced circumstances that few could imagine and had emerged stronger. The man, too, felt a transformation. The memory of being buried alive had left scars, yet those experiences had taught him humility, gratitude, and the value of human connection. He understood that life was fragile, that survival could depend on the actions of others, and that courage often appeared in unexpected places. He thought of her frequently, recalling her bravery, insight, and unwavering support. He realized that their bond went beyond circumstance. It was rooted in shared experience, trust, and mutual respect. One morning, they met at a quiet, secluded park, the air crisp and filled with the subtle sounds of nature. He arrived first, pacing lightly, thinking of the challenges they had faced and the journey that had brought them together. She appeared shortly after, walking calmly, her posture steady and her eyes alert. They greeted each other with warmth, a reflection of the trust and understanding that had grown over the weeks. They began to walk along the winding paths, speaking softly, sharing observations, and reflecting on the events that had shaped their lives. Their conversation turned to the whispered words that had haunted them both. He explained the full context, revealing that the message contained crucial guidance, warnings, and insights about the dangers that had led to his near-death experience. The words had been intended to protect, to inform, and to ensure that the right actions could be taken in time. She listened intently, appreciating the significance and the responsibility that came with this knowledge. Together, they pieced together the meaning, gaining clarity and a deeper understanding of the events that had unfolded. As they discussed the message, they realized that it also carried a lesson beyond survival. It spoke of trust, courage, and the importance of human connection in the face of adversity. They reflected on their own experiences, recognizing how their collaboration, empathy, and bravery had shaped the outcome. They understood that life was unpredictable, that danger could arise at any moment, and that the strength to face it often came from the bonds between people who cared, acted, and supported each other. Over the next few days, they focused on reinforcing safety and preparing for any potential threats. They reviewed plans, discussed scenarios, and coordinated actions with a level of precision born from necessity. Yet amidst the strategy and caution, there were moments of normalcy. They shared meals, engaged in small talk, and observed the simple joys of everyday life. These moments grounded them, reminding them that life was not solely defined by danger, but also by connection, laughter, and the beauty of ordinary experiences. One afternoon, the man invited her to a private space he had secured, a place where they could speak without concern for intrusion. As they settled in, he expressed his gratitude, not only for her actions during the rescue, but for her ongoing presence, guidance, and trust. She listened quietly, acknowledging his words with humility. She did not see herself as a hero, only as someone who had acted when necessary, but she appreciated the acknowledgement. Their exchange was sincere, grounded in shared understanding and respect, and strengthened the emotional bond that had developed. The discussion eventually shifted to the future. They considered the implications of the events that had transpired and the ways in which their lives had been altered. He reflected on the importance of using his resources and influence responsibly, while she considered the lessons learned about courage, vigilance, and human connection. They acknowledged that the experience had changed them, shaped their perspectives, and instilled a deeper appreciation for life, empathy, and resilience. As the day turned to evening, they decided to revisit the woods, the site of the rescue and the origin of their connection. The air was cool, the trees casting long shadows across the path. They walked together in silence at first, each lost in thought, then began to speak softly about the journey they had shared. When they reached the clearing, he paused, looking at the earth with reverence and reflection. She stood beside him, offering quiet support, her presence a reminder of courage, trust, and resilience. He turned to her, his voice low and steady, sharing final reflections about the whispered message and its broader significance. He explained how it had shaped decisions, influenced actions, and provided guidance that extended beyond immediate survival. The message had been a catalyst for reflection, growth, and understanding, highlighting the importance of human connection, empathy, and courageous action. She absorbed the words, recognizing their depth and the lasting impact of the shared experience. They spent the next hours walking through the forest, retracing familiar paths while observing changes in the natural world. The forest, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a symbol of resilience, courage, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Each step carried meaning, a reminder of the challenges faced, the lives affected, and the lessons learned. They discussed hopes, plans, and aspirations, finding comfort in shared understanding and the quiet assurance of mutual trust. Returning to the city, they continued to navigate life with a heightened awareness and appreciation for the ordinary moments that often go unnoticed. He engaged with his responsibilities with renewed perspective, valuing trust, empathy, and human connection alongside material success. She approached her daily routines with confidence, courage, and a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had acted decisively in extraordinary circumstances and had forged a bond that transcended status or circumstance. In the following weeks, their interactions were marked by continued collaboration, shared reflection, and the occasional light-hearted moments that brought relief from ongoing vigilance. They met in public spaces, exchanged messages, and coordinated actions to ensure ongoing safety and preparedness. Yet beneath the practical measures was a profound respect and understanding, a recognition that life could be both fragile and beautiful, shaped by courage, empathy, and connection. The whispered message, now fully understood, remained a symbol of guidance, reflection, and the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together. It reminded them of the importance of vigilance, preparation, and empathy in the face of unpredictability. It also served as a testament to human resilience, highlighting the ways in which courage and connection can shape outcomes, influence decisions, and create lasting bonds. As the story reached a quiet resolution, they reflected on the impact of the events that had occurred. Life had returned to a form of normalcy, yet the lessons, experiences, and connections forged in the woods would remain. They acknowledged the value of trust, bravery, and the power of human connection to overcome adversity. Both had grown, learned, and found strength within themselves and in each other, shaping a future informed by experience, wisdom, and empathy. The single mother returned to her child each evening, filled with gratitude for life, resilience, and the extraordinary bond she had formed. The man returned to his responsibilities, carrying with him a sense of humility, understanding, and appreciation for the courage of others. Together, they had transformed fear into strength, danger into wisdom, and vulnerability into trust. The experience had left an indelible mark, shaping their perspectives, actions, and understanding of the human spirit. In the end, the woods, the rescue, and the whispered message became more than memories. They were symbols of courage, survival, and the profound impact that human connection can have in extraordinary circumstances. They understood that life was unpredictable, that danger could arise unexpectedly, and that true courage was found in action, empathy, and trust. Their shared journey had created a bond that transcended circumstance, a connection defined by resilience, understanding, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And though the world continued around them, with its uncertainties and challenges, they walked forward with clarity, courage, and the quiet assurance that they had faced the extraordinary together and emerged stronger, wiser, and profoundly changed. Months had passed since the single mother had saved the man from the woods. Life had taken on a new rhythm, one shaped by the extraordinary events that had unfolded but grounded in the ordinary routines she had always known. Each morning she woke early, preparing breakfast, packing lunches, and seeing her child off to school. Yet, beneath the familiar cadence of life, there was an undercurrent of awareness, a reminder of the fragility of life and the courage that had carried her through so many challenges. She moved with a quiet confidence, knowing that the ordinary could become extraordinary in a single moment, and that she had proven capable of meeting whatever came her way. The man had also adjusted to a new reality. Though the trauma of being buried alive remained vivid in his memory, he approached his life with a deeper appreciation for human connection, gratitude, and caution. The whisper he had shared that day in the woods had revealed its significance over time, guiding him through decisions, relationships, and personal growth. He understood that survival was not only about physical safety but about the choices one made, the people one trusted, and the courage to act when it mattered most. He thought of her often, reflecting on her bravery, calm decisiveness, and unwavering presence during the most critical moments. Their bond, forged under extreme circumstances, had evolved into a rare friendship built on trust, mutual respect, and the shared knowledge of life's unpredictability. They communicated regularly, exchanging messages about life, safety, and the small everyday victories that gave meaning to each day. Their meetings were deliberate, often in public spaces where they could speak freely but safely, and always carried a sense of purpose. They were partners in vigilance, yet their interactions were also filled with empathy, understanding, and moments of quiet reflection on the extraordinary experience that had connected them. One weekend, they decided to revisit the forest, not out of necessity but out of a desire to confront the place where the life-altering event had occurred. The air was crisp and the ground, though hardened by seasonal changes, bore the familiar patterns of the paths they had walked countless times since. She led the way, careful and deliberate, her instincts guiding them safely through uneven terrain and fallen branches. He followed, observing the forest through new eyes, seeing it not only as a place of past danger but as a symbol of survival, courage, and resilience. As they reached the clearing where he had been buried, the memory of that terrifying day resurfaced. He stood in silence, taking in the sight, feeling a mixture of gratitude, reflection, and solemnity. She placed a gentle hand on his arm, a gesture of reassurance, acknowledging both the gravity of the past and the triumph of survival. Words were unnecessary. The silence between them carried the weight of experience, understanding, and shared humanity. They spent hours walking through the forest, discussing life, the choices that had led them to this point, and the lessons they had learned. He spoke of trust and betrayal, of the fragile line between safety and danger, and of the importance of human connection. She spoke of resilience, perseverance, and the quiet courage required to navigate life's challenges alone. Their conversation flowed naturally, a blend of reflection, advice, and insight. Each shared story, each observation reinforced the bond they had built and the respect they had for one another's strength. Returning from the forest, they continued to support each other in their respective lives. She navigated the demands of work, parenting, and daily responsibilities with renewed confidence, drawing strength from the knowledge that she had faced unimaginable circumstances and emerged stronger. He approached his business and personal life with humility and vigilance, valuing trust, empathy, and the lessons learned from the near-death experience. Their interactions were marked by consistency, care, and the recognition that their shared journey had changed them profoundly. One day, they were confronted with a new situation that tested their preparedness. A subtle threat emerged, small but concerning, a sign that someone was still monitoring events around the man. They responded with calm determination, applying the strategies and insights they had developed together. She guided him through the scenario, analyzing the situation with caution and precision, while he implemented measures to secure their safety. Their coordination was seamless, built on trust, experience, and the mutual understanding of what was at stake. The resolution of the situation reinforced the importance of vigilance and the value of partnership. They managed to navigate the threat without incident, their actions demonstrating the practical and emotional growth that had resulted from the extraordinary events in the woods. They discussed the incident afterward, reflecting on the lessons learned and the strategies that had worked, recognizing that survival required not only courage but also preparation, insight, and collaboration.